Well, we're at the stage of the engine. The owner's manual on page 14 will give you some torque specs. Also on page 15 you have some tools that they'll talk about. The number 4 is the air gap tool. You can purchase this from DDM, or you can just use a business card. You're very limited on what you can do to these engines. They give you some specs and the rules, so I'll put the rules up here on the corner, but you go to 5th Scale Dirt Oval Network and they will have the current rules posted on their page. And you have to run a kill switch. We're using the Dynamite kill switch. You can get it from DDM. It's fairly cheap, inexpensive. To use this kill switch, you pretty much have to take the coil off and disconnect your leads. And snap this one in and snap this one in, and adding your kill switch back to it, just plug it in. Alright, once you have it like this, you're ready to install it back onto the engine. You have these 2 plastic spacers. They go behind the coil, so you'll insert your bolts like so, place your spacers on, and then put in your coil. Insert your coil gap tool, rotate your flywheel till the magnet pulls down on your coil, and then go ahead and put a little torque on it. Alright, now you notice I didn't put any blue Loctite. A lot of guys put Loctite on it. I have had no issue with them loosening up in the stock class. I'm pretty sure in the open class you may want to we'll use a little bit of brake cleaner. And you know, keep in mind you don't want to get no trash down in here, but you need this gasket surface to be as clean as you possibly can. Moving on to the intake, you have the option to keep the stock intake on it. From what I gather in the rules, if you run the stock intake, you have to run the stock gaskets. I'm opting to go to the billet one. It comes with the gaskets. These gaskets we've talked about in the past, after a few heat cycles and your carburetor will loosen up. The approved gaskets, you can get these from Jennings Motorsports or Donnie Nelson Racing. But these are the gaskets that you have to run in the stock class if you go with the billet adapter. The billet adapter comes with some stainless screws. You can either use the stainless screws or you can go back with the black screws. And that's the screws that I will choose to go with. Not saying that anything bad about stainless, but I prefer steel over stainless when it's going into aluminum. I will Loctite these, but you have to make sure this gasket goes on in this way. This hole in the gasket's got to line up with that hole, and it also has to line up with this hole in the adapter. Now that you have your gasket on, go ahead and put some Loctite on these screws, and then go ahead and put your spacer on. Okay, kind of look at everything, make sure it's lining up. You don't have much wiggle room, but give it a good look over. And then go ahead and run your screws down, and then you're ready to torque it. Okay, now you're ready for your carburetor. The stock bolts that I pulled out of the air filter adapter for stock will work with your carburetor. Most guys will opt to go with an Allen head versus the Phillips, because the Allen is a little easier to torque. But we're using the DDM velocity stack. They provide a gasket. You slide it all together, and then you install this gasket. Careful that you make sure that this hole is lined up, and when it goes on, that hole will also be lined up. Okay, you're gonna put some Loctite on this. The carb is on, Loctited and torqued. Now we're ready to move on to the exhaust can. This is the high flow exhaust can from DDM. Comes with a gasket. We're not going to use this gasket. It comes with the stock screws. You can use them for a short time. They're not as hard as they need to be, and after a few heat cycles, this can will loosen up on you using these screws. I chose to go with the low C exhaust can screws. They're hard. I've not had any issues. They use a Torx bit, but you still want to drill a hole for your safety wire, and I use a 1/16 drill bit. Take your time, it'll go through it. Also on your can, you can braze in this stinger. So that's something you can do to prolong the life of it. We're not going to Loctite in these screws. We will go with the torque spec that they call for. You will have to trim off this part of the shroud. If not, it will push against the muffler. Also, before reinstalling the fan shrouds, you'll need to run this cable in between your carburetor your fan shroud. You'll modify, you'll take out the screws and you'll rotate this 90 degrees. That will allow you to crank up your engine without having to remove the body. Okay, now you're ready to install your pull starter fan shroud. Okay, the engine is assembled, and now we're ready to install our clutch carrier and clutch bell. I chose to go back with the stock clutch bell carrier and clutch bell. This stock one will be fine in the stock classes. If you do lose a bearing, it will tear this up. The clutch bell, there is an optional part. Vertigo makes it. It's a lightweight. It also has vent holes in it to reduce heat. If the stock clutch bell carrier goes out, you will opt to go with the aluminum one, they sell them at Rovan. I think TIT also sells them. They will hold up better and last longer. In your roller, when it came in the box, it came with some a little screw packet. You will need these pieces here, and you will also need this bolt, and trying to find it, these two 4mm. That's what will attach your clutch belt carrier to the engine. And for temporary, I'm going to install this one so I don't lose the screw. And also they send you some motor mount pieces for when we install the engine, so hold on to these parts. Break-in is a very controversial subject when it comes to these engines, and every engine builder and everybody has a opinion on it. My opinion comes from my engine builder from years back. On initial startup, make sure that the jet settings are set to the rich side of it, just a touch rich, and go ahead and fire it up. Let it run for about 15 minutes. Then let it cool down, and then readjust your screws at the settings that they recommend from the manufacturer, and crank it up and let it run for another 15 minutes, and that's good to go at that point. When you get to the racetrack, you will, for your first session, you'll go out on the track and just run a little bit over half throttle for that first practice session on the engine, and it will be broke in. The controversial part on these engines is you have nickel plated cylinders, and everybody says, well, you can just run it like that right out the box. However, that ring still needs the seat, and also you need some run-in time on your bearings and on your crankshaft. So do it the way you want, but that's the way I was taught, and that's how I will continue to do it. Again, I want to thank you for watching. If you have any comments, again, put them in the comment section below, and I will try to answer them. Have a great day.